I will be introduced, yes. So you said, okay.
Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the VitaFood Asia webinar series. I'm really excited to be here with all of you today in this webinar episode. My name is Isabel and I'll be your host. And today we have President of Herbal Pharmacist Media LLC, David J. Foreman with us, and he'll be speaking about decoding dietary supplement on immune health. Okay, though before we start the session during this webinar, if anyone has question, you can type your question in our Q&A box and David will answer at the end of the session. So now I'd like to hand this session over to David. Hello, David.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And for anybody that lives where I do, it's a very early good morning. Very excited to be a part of VitaFoods Asia virtual. And I'm even more excited about being live in Bangkok in September. I am expected to speak twice there, so I'm looking forward to actually seeing everybody in person in just a few months. So today's topic I've called understanding the immune system, and the whole idea here is to really bring everyone up to speed on one, what is the immune system, and then how we can best approach that using the right dietary supplement for the right reason. So again, it's a true honor to be a part of this event. Could I have the next slide, please? So I figured, best way to get things started, I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about. So there's 4 key areas of focus. One is I'm going to give everybody at least 1 hour of college credit today as I get into the class of Immune System 101. We're also going to discuss the different categories of immune support and or maybe even more so of the immune system. So it's sort of a flow from one thing to the next. And then which type of ingredient is for what type of impact on the immune system. This is where I feel like in our industry as a whole, we're conveying a message to the consumer that is probably not the way the consumer is considering it or thinking about it. An example of that would be, somebody's product says for immune support, and the average consumer might think immune support means that it's going to help boost my immune system so that I don't get ill. And yet sometimes immune support means something completely different. And we will cover that in more depth. And then the last thing is just really, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power to us, whether we're in formulator, whether we're in sales or we're marketing, or even more importantly, the end consumer. And as I like to say, no matter what level you are in the industry, the natural product industry, whether you're in functional foods and beverages, you're, R&D, product development, sales, marketing, you could be in the finance department. At the end of the day, we're all part of, we should all be considered a consumer as well. I mean, I'm a consumer. Granted, I do majority of my work is in education in the industry, but at the end of the day, if you went into my kitchen right now, I have a drawer just full of supplements that I take every day. Next slide, please. So as I said, it's a joke because no, I cannot hand you college credits or university credits. But I thought it'd be a really good idea before we get into the ingredients or the supplements that fit into the functional foods, beverages, and or dietary supplements, is to really give you an idea of what is the immune system. So the immune system is divided up into two basic areas. One is generally called acquired, also known as adaptive. And then the other form of immunity is this, what we call innate, which is really you're born with. This is when you are born. The very first day you're born, the very first time you take your breath, you already have this component for your immune system, whereas acquired is developed over time. And I'm actually going to get into a lot more detail of this on the next few slides, but briefly, just to have everybody able to wrap their head around it in a short form, the acquired or adaptive. And by the way, for whatever reason, when I did rehearse this from home, I actually interchange both words. So just bear with me on that one. I haven't really picked one that I particularly like, but we can see we've often probably heard of maybe going to the doctor, or especially during the time of COVID, we might have heard these two words, the T cell immunity or B cell immunity. I'll explain in more depth of what those really are and what they mean. And then with regards to the innate system, let's start on the right. There's those physical barriers. Things like your skin is actually a form of your defense system. Your skin keeps, we call them pathogens. Pathogens are things that cause, illness or disease. In this case, they're physical barriers to help protect your body from those, and skin is the largest one. The mucous membrane, so the mucous membrane in your sinuses or even in your private areas, those are protective. Saliva, and which I'm a little dry right now, so you might see me drinking my tea. It is 5 a.m. here in Florida where I live. So I'm a little nervous. I don't know why I do so many of these, but when you get a little nervous, your mouth gets dry. So I need to boost up my saliva to help keep my immune system functioning properly. Urine and tears. No, I'm not combining those two, but they are also part of this innate or born with system. And then of course your stomach acid. And then on the left side of this grid, we have those things that are bloodborne. Basically, they're in your bloodstream. And these are the cells that actually you see under innate equals born with, we see the words self versus non-self. This is the part of your body, that left-hand side, the neutrophils, macrophages, basophils, eosinophils, natural killer cells, dendrites, etc. These are all very technical scientific words. We'll get into more detail on what they are. But those are the cells that actually are important for helping your body determine what is supposed to be part of it. In other words, a skin cell, a lung cell, a blood cell, whatever type of cell, versus something that is not you, which could be a virus, a bacteria, an abnormal cell that your body produced that could lead to a tumor or a parasite, etc. So these are the cells that are designed to really identify what is you, what's supposed to be in you, and what is not supposed to be in you, or actually on you. Next slide, please. I think while we're changing slides, I'm going to have a little hit of my tea, everybody. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, so acquired immunity, or as I said earlier, I might bounce back and forth, or adaptive immunity. Again, sort of as reminders on this, acquired immunity is activated by an exposure to a pathogen. So acquired immunity is what vaccines are supposed to be. And since we all have probably have nightmares about vaccines, etc., the concept of a vaccine is that you are exposing the body to that foreign, whatever it is. In medicine, we call it an antigen. And an antigen, in this case, I put pathogen, could be a virus, bacteria, fungus, etc. The body uses memory. That's what happens when you get your vaccine. Your body has this memory system to help avoid that, whatever that is, for the next time you're exposed to it. So this part of your immune system is also much slower. Why? It has to learn what is foreign to your body so that the next time the immune system can respond more clearly. And then, as I said earlier, oftentimes these are called, we are exposed to an antigen, which is that foreign component. And then your body produces an antibody to neutralize that antigen. And there's two basic forms of this. These I said earlier in my little chart on the previous slide. We have B cells. They're called B cells because they're formed in the bone marrow. That one's not really that funny. And there's two basic types. There's effector cells. These help the body produce more antibodies, which is really what we want, especially, if we are exposed to some sort of a virus, a bacteria. We want the body to produce more antibodies because antibodies actually neutralize or destroy, depending on the type of antibody. They can neutralize, destroy, and or remove. It can even be a toxin from the body. So the more antibodies we can produce, the better, our stronger our immune system will be. And then memory cells. I think the obvious description of what that is, hey, they remember what those pathogens or those antigens are for the next time you become exposed. And then hopefully your immune system will react a lot quicker the second go around. That's what it's designed to do. And then T cells, these are actually what were B cells. They were formed in the bone marrow, but they end up migrating to the thymus, and they're called the T cells. And they're divided up into three areas. Basically, we have the T helper cells, and what they help activate both the T and B cells and other immune cells to respond to what's going on. Sort of like, somebody with a big megaphone that identified a criminal roaming around the streets, and it's signaling out to the police to come and neutralize the criminal. Well, in this case, that's what sort of but that's what T helpers do. They will notify a majority of your immune cells to, hey, come and take care of this foreign invader. Cytotoxic T cells, these actually will literally basically it's like handcuffing and taking away the criminal. They remove pathogens and infected host cells. A lot of people aren't aware of what that really means with infected host cell. The way viruses replicate, and again, a lot of this is just educational, so you understand what's going on within our bodies, because too often we don't, and we just willy-nilly, as I like to say, just accept what people tell us, and sometimes that's not true. But in this case, viruses actually replicate by using your healthy cell material to replicate themselves. So when they actually will get into your cell in some way, form, or fashion, and then use the pieces of your cell. So now that cell is actually infected with the virus. And in this case, cytotoxic T cells will actually help remove the pathogen itself and or remove infected cells. And then last but not least, T regulatory cells. We can see here that these help distinguish between self and non-self, which I described earlier. And why is that important? Well, people that have autoimmune conditions where their immune system is over responsive, the immune system actually ends up attacking the body. In this case, T regulatory cells will help the body distinguish between what is supposed to be part of you and what isn't. Next slide, please. So now we'll get into the innate. This is the area of the body that your immune system that you're born with. And the primary category are called phagocytes. These basically are eaters, man. They just love to just eat up your non-self. We jokingly will call them periodically in the in the science field, the security guard for your body and your immune system. And I'll rip through these pretty quick. We have macrophages. I think a lot of people that have at least a little bit of a clue within the biology, physiology, of our bodies. We've probably heard macrophages. I used to look at them when I was in pharmacy school as this just big green blob that would just swallow up anything that was bad. So they can roam around your body throughout all tissues, bloodstream, etc. And their job is to, like I said, engulf or eat like a phagocyte, like I said earlier. But it also produces something we call cytokines. And I'm going to actually give you another college university credit on cytokines in a couple of slides from now. But for now, just understand that cytokines are these chemical messengers that they're helping your immune system be more like an orchestra and work together. Mast cells, these are found in the mucous membrane of your body. And so in your sinuses, I'll give you a really cool example in a second. And these are also produce cytokines that are going to create inflammation in your body. I'll just tell you right now. So a mast cell contains histamine. A lot of us have taken medications in the past called antihistamines or antihistamines, and they neutralize histamine or sometimes will stabilize the mast cell. The mast cell contains histamine. So when you are exposed to pollen, which is actually an antigen, or so it's not actually, it is an antigen. When you are exposed to that pollen molecule, and all of a sudden, it's allergy season, and what happens? Your nose gets very stuffy, maybe even all the way up into your sinuses get very inflamed, so you have trouble breathing, and you also notice that your nose runs a lot more. That is caused by these mast cells. They burst. The idea here is that there's a foreign invader. In this case, it's a pollen molecule. And your body secretes these to, in the case of your allergies, one, to cause inflammation, inflammation is the very first response of your immune system. So it's triggering the immune system to kick in, but it also ends up causing the body to produce more mucus. And that drainage that you get, that runny nose that we always want to stop, and that's why most people take antihistamines, is actually a protective benefit of your body. Your body knows there's pollen there, and it's trying to naturally rid the body of that foreign invader, that pollen, and flush it out. So it's funny because, I feel like a lot of times the quote treatments we use in modern medicine for allergies, which is really having this effect on mast cells and histamine, can be counterproductive. Granted, it helps relieve the symptoms, but at the same time, your body is having that reaction for a particular reason. Moving on down the line, we have different types of immune cells, neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils that release these granules that are, in the case of neutrophils, that are toxic to bacteria and fungus. With eosinophils, they're toxic to bacteria and parasites. So we can see, if I eat a lot of sushi, we know there's parasites probably in raw fish. And I need these cells to be able to be produced so that they can perhaps destroy, or hopefully destroy, the parasites that were in my salmon sashimi that I had a few nights ago. And then basophils also act similar to both mast and eosinophils. Natural killer cells, these are, they're naturally born to be killers. They destroy infected cells in order to stop the spread of infection. These are very important for your overall immune cell health. And then the last but not least are these dendritic cells, and they act as a bridge between your acquired immunity or that adaptive immunity and the innate immunity. So they sort of bridge the gap between the two, and primarily will help with the communication between the two systems, we'll say, with regards to immunity. Next slide, please. So I said I was going to give you this translation of immune categories. And these are really more so for, I would say, the marketability of your product. whatever that finished product may be. These are terms that you're going to want to either use and or translate to convey a proper message when you are marketing to your customer. So I think I listed off 5 in this area. So the first one is immunomodulatory. I like to call immunomodulatory sort of like an adaptogen when it comes to, so it enhances the body's, I'll explain that in a minute. There's a couple of areas here that are adaptogen-like. In theory, I think we understand adaptogens, and I'll define that for you in a second. So one, immunomodulatory enhances the body's immune response. Ingredients that fall into this category either stimulates or suppresses the immune system, depending on what's needed. That's where the adaptogen word comes in. So in adaptogens, and this is why actually sometimes adaptogens may actually be supportive to immune health, and I'm going to cover that at the very end of my presentation today. But adaptogens are why do we take them? They help our bodies adapt or balance itself to physical and emotional stress. So in other words, like if you're too tired, an adaptogen can give you more energy. But if you're a little bit too wound up, a little too hyperactive, it can actually calm you down. So it can get you to go both ways. Immunomodulatory supplements actually do the same thing. They will actually stimulate your immune system to be more active or produce more cells, etc., when you need more. But at the same time, it'll actually also suppress the immune function depending on what your body needs. Why would I need immune suppression? Well, let's use what we just have been going through with COVID. And I'll use this example again later, so that's kind of cool. I'm talking about it right now. But with regards to the immune system, I actually was a COVID sufferer. I probably should have died from it, and I was fully vaccinated at the time. Let's not get any discussions of whether you should or shouldn't get vaccinated, et cetera. But needless to say, I nearly died from it. So my immune system was in this hyperactive phase for at least 11 days while I was sick. I had a fever, a very high fever for 11 straight days. But then when my body finally was able to rid myself of the infection, I don't need it to stay super hyperactive. I need it to slow back down and get back to what we call homeostasis, or just balance. Like it needs to chill out, so to speak. And for there's people that now have, quote, long COVID. A lot of those people are having that because their immune system, different parts of it, stayed hyperactive. So for whatever reason, the body wasn't able to slow itself down or calm itself down or suppress it. So we need immunomodulatory to help keep the immune system doing what it's supposed to when it's supposed to be doing it, and not getting you stuck in a bad place. And there are an awful lot of health challenges that do come about. And then you can see it also, this immunomodulatory helps the body fight against abnormal cell production, infection, and other diseases. Again, because of its effect on either being able to activate or slow down the immune system. Antioxidants, I think we all know this one. They neutralize free radicals. I used to say a joke in the old days that free radicals were hippies from the 60s. For anybody that gets the whole hippie thing. I'm a baby boomer, so at 59, I know what a hippie is. I saw them. Anyway, antioxidants improve certain immune responses. They actually help they can help prevent the damage, not just to your immune cells, but they can also help prevent the damage to any one of your cells. And that's probably one of the main reasons that it has such a strong effect on the immune system. And we all know that an adequate intake of antioxidants is essential for the true functioning of the immune system and for the effect of other immune responses, very heavily connected. All of these areas are interconnected. It's not like the immune system just acts in one area. It's sort of as if you had a scale, but the scale didn't just have two sides to it. You had multiple sides. So when I push down on this scale, the ones next to it go up, and the one on the farthest side actually goes up the highest. And that's what we see with regards to antioxidants, immunomodulatory T cells, T helper cells, et cetera, that they're all in the same balance, and that we need the leader of the orchestra to make sure that it's functioning properly. T helper cells, these are considered the most critical cells for the adaptive immunity that, or the acquired, like I said, I'm interchanging these both. They're required for almost all adaptive immune responses. They activate the B cells to secrete antibodies and macrophages to destroy those foreign invaders, those antigens. So obviously that is why they're so critical. It pretty much is orchestrating all of these are orchestrating all of the really important components of your adaptive immunity. And they also activate cytotoxic T cells, which I talked about earlier. Next slide, please. Hope it's going okay for everybody. I'm just saying, I feel like I'm pretty chipper for 5:24 in the morning here on the East Coast of the United States. I am looking forward to being live at VitaFoods Asia in September as well. Make sure you mark your calendars. If you haven't signed up, I've been to it. I think the last 4 years that we've had it, there was that year we didn't have it because of COVID, but I've attended it every year. And this is my quick advertisement for the event. You really need to make sure you attend. Some really cool innovation, not just on ingredients, but technological advances, packaging, et cetera. It's that one-stop shopping, I guess you could say. So lymphocytes, let's move back to my presentation after that brief commercial break. Lymphocytes, these are white blood cells. So you go for a doctor visit and they do what they call a CBC, your blood test. A lot of times you'll see it'll talk about lymphocytes. If they're in normal range, that's a great thing. For my mother, who actually had leukemia and ended up dying from it, too many of a good thing or too much of a good thing is not a good thing. But these are white blood cells, okay? And white blood cells are what makes up really the importance of your immune system. There are three main types. I talked about these earlier: T cells, B cells, and natural killer cells. So they act to recognize those antigens. They recognize it. Remember, they're the signalers going, hey, 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 over here. And or they produce the antibodies, and antibodies are what can neutralize, destroy, and or help remove, take away any of these harmful cells, whether the ones that are the pathogenic, such as a virus, bacteria, parasite, fungus, or even help destroy those abnormal cells that your body is producing on a regular basis. T cells, sorry, I moved too quick. T cells, they help recognize the antigen and bind to them. B cells recognize and attach to specific antigens too. So I know I talked about this earlier when I was showing you the grid of, the acquired / adaptive and the innate immune system with the little boxes. Last but not least, NK cells, or those natural killer cells, are important because they recognize virally infected cells. This is something that is huge. And as well as other types of tumor cells. Again, tumor cells are abnormally produced cells by the body. Our body's doing that all the time. For whatever reason, there's many different reasons we produce abnormal cells. And the way it ends up becoming a tumor is if your immune system is really not responding fast enough, or has enough, we'll call them fighters in this case, like NK cells. If your body's just not producing enough of those abnormal cells will then replicate, and that's what ends up forming a tumor. So we need these NK cells to be there to actually kill or destroy either the infected cells and or neutralize those abnormal cells that your body's producing. That's why when you read studies, when you're in R&D, or maybe you're in sales and marketing, and you hear people talking about, natural killer cells in their research, this is why they're very important, because they really do play a critical role in, especially for people who have concerns with the production of abnormal cells, whether it's a skin cell, pick any cell in your body. We have immunopotentiating, boy, that was a tough one to say. This one actually directly enhances one or more of immune functions. So this is sort of like the conductor. These immunopotentiating helps act more as a conductor to enhance the specific functions or modify one or more components of your immune system. So immunopotentiating. So if we see something in research and they classify it as immunopotentiating, we can see that. I remember earlier when I was talking about immunomodulatory, I said there's another area. Immunopotentiating fits real well with that. So if we see an ingredient that has this immunomodulating, immunopotentiating, these are the types of ingredients that I want to take on an everyday basis to support my immune system, because I know they're safe. They're not going to overstimulate, understimulate. They're not going to suppress. They're just going to do what I need it to do. And they're going to conduct and make sure that everything's being carried out the way I want. So when I'm looking at formulating for success for a long period of time, people that just don't want to get sick, or maybe they've had a history of getting something, they don't want to ever get it again, then these two categories to me are the real keys in order to really have a successful long-term formula. So for me, when I do R&D, and that's one of the things I do periodically, so people put ingredients together with different mechanisms of action so they can create a very effective formula with regards to immune health. I'm really looking for those two categories because I know, one, that's what they're going to do. They're going to be great for long-term use. And two, they're going to be safer. They're not pushing down on the scale or forcing a particular action to happen. Is as soon as I make the body produce something more, then it's going to possibly throw the rest of my immune system and or other parts of my body out of alignment or out of whack. And last but not least, cytokine production. And I'm actually going to cover these on the next slide. So I'm not going to get too chatty on this, but they interact with the cells. I like to call them the neurotransmitter, the communicator between of all of your immune system. Some of them actually stimulate, and some of them actually will tell the body to slow down immune production. And immune cells use cytokines to talk to other immune cells. Let's go to the next slide. It's going to be much easier to talk about cytokines because I feel like, yeah, next slide, please. I feel like this is an area, especially during what we just came out of with COVID, this area was poorly communicated by everybody. There's only a few people I think that got this one right. And I'm going to pat myself on the back. I'm one of the people who I think I got it right. So, so cytokines in our industry of natural health, especially during those challenging immune times we just came out of, hopefully we're all out of it now. There was a term being thrown around extremely loose called the cytokine storm. And let's just clarify what all of this really is. So first of all, cytokines are good when you need to fight off an infection. Cytokine production is really what stimulates the beginning of a powerful immune response. Okay, so they normally first thing that happens when cytokines get active, when you have some sort of an infection to fight off, is they trigger an inflammatory response. And that inflammation is a notification to immune cells to come rushing to the scene. A great example of this is if you cut your hand and you notice that it bleeds and then it stops bleeding, but around the edges of your cut, you notice that it's red and it's raised. That is because cytokines came and they triggered an inflammatory response to bring other immune cells in there to keep you from getting an infection from an open wound. So cytokines are good. Cytokines can be bad though when you have some sort of an inflammatory health challenge or the body can't turn them off, which is probably what happened with a lot of people that did end up having COVID. Is their immune system got hyperactive, producing just a ton of cytokines, and for whatever reason, just couldn't turn them off. So I love analogies. So let me give you a quick analogy on this. And cytokines are like a storm, okay? So you get a storm, it rains a little bit, waters the grass, the flowers, and then the storm ends and goes away. That's a good storm, right? That's a very good storm. When So that's a good side of, that's the good effect that the cytokines have. They come in, do what they need to, and then they go away. They turn off, whatever you want to, whatever terminology you want to use. But what's bad is when one, you end up having a storm, and I live in Florida, so it's storm season. In Bangkok, I've been a part of many storms. If anybody follows me on LinkedIn, you saw last year I got stuck in a storm in Bangkok riding a motorcycle taxi. And there was not one dry part of me anywhere. I lost a very expensive pair of shoes because of they would not dry out and turn moldy. It's amazing. But anyway, so we have two different kinds of storms that can happen. We can have a storm that comes in, lasts for only an hour, maybe has tornado winds in it, lightning that's destructive, high winds that are destructive, and just dumps a lot of rain. We're, just multiple centimeters of rain, maybe 10 centimeters or more of rain, and that causes flooding. That's a bad storm, but that's over a short period of time. So to get too many of a good thing in a short period of time, that's bad. Long term, it rains for days and days. Maybe you don't get high winds, but it rains and rains and rains for days and days on end. You end up getting flooding. That's when, in this case, it'll be like cytokines being elevated over an extended period of time. Why are they bad for somebody with an inflammatory health challenge? Well, they trigger inflammation. If I already have joint inflammation, if I already have cardiovascular inflammation, if I already have respiratory inflammation, wherever that might be in my body, this can end up making that situation much worse. So I already described what the cytokines are. That's the middle part of the slide. I'm not going to get into that. But the questions we need to ask ourselves when we're formulating is if we're concerned with getting sick from COVID, well, in this case, I put COVID-19 as an example. If I'm worried about getting sick from whatever, would I want to take a supplement that suppresses my cytokine production? No, I need them to stimulate the immune cell response so that I get better quicker. My body destroys, eliminates, binds to whatever it is. So, or if, is taking a cytokine suppressing supplement the best way to avoid getting sick? No, it's not. And so a lot of ingredients in our industry were being promoted as immune support, yet the part of support they were doing was suppressing cytokines. And so as a consumer, and I'm taking something that suppresses my initial immune response, is that really something I want to do in order to not get sick? No, it's not. And so we need to make sure we're clear on what type of immune support we're providing. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. So which ingredient for what? Do we want to stimulate the immune system or do we want to support? Stimulate ingredients are those that we use short term. We're coming down with something and they will increase immune cell production and activity. Or do we want to support? So stimulate, that's short term. Support, like I was talking about earlier with immunomodulatory, et cetera. These are the things that support the body. So these are used for long term, or the bad word, the P word, we're not supposed to use. We can use it among us. We just can't use it in the public. Is prevention. And then again, these support the functionality of the immune system. So do we want to stimulate that? Yeah, we do. If I haven't done anything to support my immune system over time and I'm starting to feel bad, my cough has nothing to do with anything other than getting dried out today. But then I want to stimulate, or I only want to support when or do I want to support? That's something I want to do over a long period of time. So we need to know what those are. So the next slide, please. So I found this cute little image. I thought it was appropriate. So I'm just going to give you some examples of ingredients that fall into the stimulate. These are the three most popular, and echinacea, vitamin C, zinc. There are definitely others, but these are the three biggies. Zinc sometimes can fall into another category. By the way, zinc by mouth, when you swallow it whole, is a lot less, like significantly less effective for immune function. Whereas if you take it as a lozenge or a chewable, it actually gets into the mucous membrane. And that is where it will actually have a significant impact on you fending off what you might have just gotten exposed to. Next slide, please. Everybody notice I didn't spend a lot of time on stimulate. Why? Because we don't want to do that unless we're really coming down something. What we want to do is we want to live in this slide and we want to take things that support the immune system. So I listed off a bunch of ingredients. All of the things I'm talking about here all have clinical substantiation, especially if I listed them by a trade name. So we can see the first ingredient, Symetrian, sorry, it's like symmetry, IAN, Symetrian. This is a clinically substantiated ingredient that I would consider. You can see here, it's a blend of actually 3 botanicals. I'm the herbal pharmacist, so I love herbal botanical combinations. This is very effective for supporting the immune system. Another one by trade name is Spectrumune. Again, a multiple combination. This one contains the very common and powerful adaptogen ashwagandha. But anyway, again, clinically substantiated. One of those things that, based on the studies, when I looked at the mechanisms of action, how it supported the body's and the immune system, these would be ingredients that I would want to look at taking over a long period of time. Beta glucans. There's probably the most effective, based on clinical studies, is the 1316. The trademark on that one, the trade name ingredient on that one is Wellmune. I think a lot of us around the world have heard about Wellmune. I think there's several hundred clinical studies done with that ingredient alone. That's beta glucan 1316. But there's also an algal form now, beta glucan 13, sold under 2 different trade names. I'm not going to get into what those are. That also have reasonable studies, maybe 2 studies, so it's not as studied. But again, supports the functionality of the immune system. It can actually help train the immune system, which is a whole new topic for another day. Berry extracts. Initially, I listed them all out, but there were too many words, so I left them out. Elderberry is probably the most common that falls into this. But at the same time, any of the berries really can. So lingonberry is another real popular one for immune health. Amla is another. These are all things that I would throw into. I don't think amla is actually a berry. My apologies. But berries are high in antioxidants. Antioxidants are one of those things that I can consider the things that we should do for long-term immune support. But the berry extracts also have other effects or impacts specifically on how they impact the immune system. Black seed oil, there's a bunch of different ones on the market. I listed thymoquin primarily because with regards to thymoquin, this is the only black seed oil that I'm aware of that meets the USP standards for what a black seed oil composition should be. There's also numerous studies on how it impacts positively the immune system. An ingredient a lot of people haven't heard about, immunolin. This is another one of my favorites personally. The reason I like immunolin is that it actually binds antigens. It's super high naturally in IgG, which is an antibody, excuse me, naturally produced by the body, actually naturally produced in mammals, and is great at binding and or neutralizing and or eliminating those pathogens that we get exposed to. PEA, if you're not familiar with PEA, there's actually one trademark version of it called Levagen Plus. Levagen Plus is the more bioavailable form. They actually do have studies with Levagen Plus with regards to its impact on immune function as well. PEA in general has over 350 plus clinical studies across many different areas. And then, of course, let's not forget the microbiome. We all know that we all have said that 70% of immune function originates in the gut. Microbiome's huge. So as I'm formulating for success, even though I might use Symetrian or thymoquin, et cetera, in a formula, perhaps adding a probiotic to it. And if I'm using a probiotic, I want to make sure I'm using at least a prebiotic. And there's more and more research coming out on even the impact of just going straight to postbiotics, et cetera. And then vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of those things that a majority of people are deficient in, and also plays in a very essential role in immune health. I highly encourage you to not just take a vitamin D supplement. I highly encourage you to get your vitamin D level checked. I live in Florida. I ride my bike without my shirt on a lot of times in the warmer weather. So I get that full sun exposure. I ride my bike for exercise for at least an hour, 3 times a week. So I should be getting in. I play golf. I don't wear sunscreen. And yet my vitamin D levels were low, even though I was taking, I think at the time I was taking 5,000 units of vitamin D. So get your vitamin D levels checked. Next slide, please. It looks like I'm going to finish my part on time. So there's 2 areas that I like people to consider outside the box when you're formulating. I actually said during this challenging time we were going through that we may want to consider adding ingredients for stress or sleep. I'm not going to get into the physiology of it but there are of these 2, but basically just know that if you're under chronic stress, has a significant effect on decreasing your immune cell production, immune cell effectiveness. Same thing with sleep. Even just one bad night of sleep will cause a significant reduction in certain immune cells and the functionality. So these are some of the stress ingredients that I'm very fond of for stress and sleep. I'm not going to read them off just for time's sake, but you can see that I said, in the US, I'm not sure about globally, but, we have products that are nighttime formulas during, cough and cold season, and perhaps now formulating a product that's a nighttime formula. A daytime formula would contain a stress ingredient. A nighttime formula may be something for sleep, along with one of those immune support ingredients. Or if it's for short-term use, which a lot of the things that you find in pharmacies are, then maybe using an ingredient that works to stimulate the immune system, but formulating these to really address more than one reason. Instead of just addressing the immune system, address why the immune system might be weak or contributing to when you're sick. You usually don't sleep well. When you're sick, it's stressful. So why not add one of these ingredients to your formulation? Next slide, please. So I said earlier, knowledge is power. Key things here. One is, making sure is the ingredient, for a square or round hole. You don't try to put a square peg into a round hole unless you've got sandpaper, right? So is this ingredient, are we formulating for a short-term product or something to be taken over an extended period of time? That's where you go either stimulate short-term, support long-term. One, what impact does the ingredient actually have on the immune system? If it's suppressing cytokines, maybe like an omega-3, then maybe it's not the best ingredient to use, and make sure we're promoting it for this is affecting the immune response inflammation, which I know we can't necessarily market things that way, but making sure we're knowing what impact this ingredient actually has on the immune system. You go to the clinical research, it'll usually tell you real quick what those things are and mechanisms of action. How long should it be taken? If I'm taking high levels of vitamin C, I shouldn't be taking that perlay for more than a week or 2. But if I'm taking something like a beta-glucan 1316 or thymoquin or Symetrian, then I might need to take it, because like beta-glucan, most of those ingredients I just mentioned can take at least 3 days to really kick in to start working with your immune system. So how long does it take to work? And then are any of these going to interact? If I'm taking an immune stimulant, but I have an autoimmune condition, I probably don't want to take an immune stimulant because my immune system is already overactive. So if I have an autoimmune condition, then maybe I even want to warn the consumer that, this contains something that might overstimulate your immune system, throwing gasoline on your fire. Next slide, please. And last but not least, I just want to say thank you. I know we're going to open this up to questions. I do encourage people to reach out if you have more further questions. I also want to have a disclaimer. I probably should have said this at the beginning. It's one of the favorite things I love when I'm working with Informa throughout all their platforms, not just VitaFoods, but supply side network, etc., is that if I didn't mention your ingredient, please get over it. I couldn't possibly list all of the ingredients that are available in that category. I highly encourage you to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn with educational material. And you can also attend a lot of other webinars I do, not only for the VitaFoods platform, whether it's in Europe, Asia. I will probably be speaking in India next February. Supply side shows, all the Informa platforms, but you can find those out by following me on LinkedIn as well. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, my dear. And I
Thank you so
need a
much,
sip.
David.
I need a sip of my tea anyway. So
Sure, sure. There are a few questions for you though. Let's go to what related to cytokine. So the first question, do cytokine levels affect the metabolism and utilization of omega-3 fatty acid supplements in individuals with COVID-19?
So yes, I believe they do. So earlier we were talking about, right there towards the end, I talked about, the use of an omega-3, the essential fatty acid. So that's where I feel like those essential fatty acids would play a very important role for someone that has those overactive cytokines. So yeah, I think they would play very well. For me personally, I'll just, I know you didn't ask for it, but you're going to get it anyway. For me, one of the most important things that I recommend for people that are having issues from their immune system still being out of whack after they've been sick. For me, I described for me when I had COVID. I'm not saying these are the cures or treatments or whatever, but for me personally, it was super important to start taking anything and everything I could to get my immune system to calm back down. So I was taking 3 to 4 and sometimes 5 grams of omega-3s because of what you just asked about. I was taking high levels of turmeric / curcumin. I was making sure my vitamin D levels were there. But yeah, that's a really good question. I'm glad that was asked.
Sure, thank you. Related to probiotics, is it safe to take it daily, or is it safe to take supplement daily? For example, if you take herbs or anything, it could affect the liver or something. So I would like to know, is it safe to take daily, as you mentioned, turmeric or any other herbs?
Yes, actually, it's something I highly recommend. Years ago, when I was doing more consumer-oriented education, I had what I created my foundation of health. There were 4 things that I felt like somebody should take every day, just as the foundation to build off of to take other supplements. And one of those areas was to take a probiotic on a daily basis. What I do encourage people to do, though, is to change up the probiotic that they take. The microbiome has so many types of beneficial bacteria within it. And to take a supplement that maybe only has 10 is really not necessarily doing your body justice, we'll say. So, but I definitely suggest taking I actually know of no reason why someone would not want to take a probiotic on a daily basis. I'm on another topic. I'm working on a webinar for I do these seminars called the Health Condition Corner. They're once a month. My next one is, I think, the 11th of July, and it's on beauty from within. And one of the things I discuss in that is really the importance of the gut with regards to skin health. We know the gut is connected to brain health, immune health, et cetera. So yeah, taking a probiotic, making sure you're taking prebiotics, the food they live on, et cetera, are really, I think, important on it for daily use.
Yes, sure. Another question from Julie Yu. What are the role of probiotics on immune as compared to other ingredients that you mentioned for support or stimulate? Which function would you think probiotics is?
Okay, I love that. I actually, luckily, I had my Q&A up, so I saw Julie send her message in. Thank you, Julie. So the role of probiotics in immune health is really from what these friendly bacteria will produce, the production of like butyric acid, et cetera, the butyrate, however you want to call it. The compounds that these friendly bacteria produce support either the fight of inflammation, et cetera. So for me, how do they compare? It's just one component of the support of the immune system. If I come down with something, I'm starting to not feel well. If I take a probiotic, it's not going to really necessarily make me feel better, or activate, we'll call it activate my immune system that quickly. Probiotics are more to support the function of either immune cell production or the components that will get the immune system to work better. So that's why earlier towards the end of my talk, I gave that example of, combining. I always consider combining a probiotic with a prebiotic. I mean, the probiotic needs something to live off of. I call it fertilizer. So we need something to help it grow and replicate, etc. And then combining it with something that has a completely different mechanism of action. I think in my example, I used maybe combining it with something like the beta glucan 1316, where that has a completely different effect on the immune system. So hopefully that helps. Probiotics, I think, are really critical when you consider 70% of immune function, it originates in the gut. To me, they should be a part of just about any immune support product in my own mind.
Okay, David. Thank you so much, David, for your participation today. I hope your insights and expertise will be benefit to our audience, and I appreciate your time and effort you put in preparing this webinar session.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, David. So now our webinar has ended, and I would like to thank you and emphasize about the VitaFoods Asia physical exhibition again in Bangkok, Thailand this year. VitaFoods Asia will be the leading event of dietary supplement and ingredients, which will be held on 20th to 22nd September at Queen Circuit Convention Center. You can meet up more than 350 companies, bring their latest ingredients and finished products to the showcase. These 3 days, we will be organized several highlights, such as new products or ingredients zone, where we invite professionals like David today with us, a quality speaker who excited to share their knowledge, and nutraceutical industry update at the main stage as well, and much more exciting activities are waiting for you to explore. So please stay tuned for the next VitaFoods Asia webinar series. Our next episode, which is the special edition, collaborating with CPHI, is Are You Suitical? And you can keep up on the updates on VitaFood Asia social media and pre-register to visit on show on our website by scanning the QR code there, which is being displayed on the screen, or clicking the link in the chat box. So, and if you would like to meet David in person, he'll be there physically at the event. Yeah, sure. Really glad to have you, David. Thank you so much once again, and I'll see you again next time. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.